Hi everyone, Mark Washburn here from PondAlgaeSolutions.com, and in this week's video tip, I wanted to talk as quickly as possible anyway, although it may run on a little bit, about a very important addition to your pond, particularly if you have fish. The reason I wanted to discuss this is that lately here we've been going through the spring and early summer with pretty moderate temperatures. We've been running anywhere from the mid 70s up to once in a while the low 80s in Iowa, and that's not too bad. It's not unusual, but just in the last few days we've hit some temperatures in the mid to high 90s, and I know around a lot of the country folks are starting to see this as well. It may not last very long, but it's very important to understand that when your water temperature rises, as your air temperature rises, your water temperature can also go up. And if your water temperature gets above 78 degrees Fahrenheit, it will begin to have or lose its ability to hold dissolved oxygen very well. And so this is why when you get into the hot summer months, there's a chance that you could have some fish loss and problems with that. Also, if you're treating a particular growth problem, whether it's algae or aquatic weeds, you also need to remember that anytime you're killing off plant growth, it is pulling oxygen from the water. When it grows, it's adding oxygen. When it dies, it's pulling oxygen. And if it's killed off very rapidly in great amounts, you can lose fish that way too, even in moderate temperatures. And so it pays to be very aware of how heat and the eradication of plants can cause some dissolved oxygen depletion in a pond. So the reason that or the cause of why I wanted to talk about pond aeration is because this is one of the ways that you can supplement and keep dissolved oxygen levels up, or at least sustained, during these kind of crises. And so but at the same time, I've also found that when we talk about aeration, some people still sort of misunderstand this. Certainly, if you have a waterfall and you're getting some action there as the water drops into the pond, there is a certain amount of aerating that takes place. It may or may not be as much as you think. For large pond owners, a lot of folks will say, well, I've got an incoming flow, underground stream coming in, and so that's pumping fresh water in, and while that's good, that's not necessarily aeration. And so this is a quick, and I hope you can see this in the video, but this is a bit of a diagram and a quick explanation of what we're talking about. Now, this is an aerating fountain, and while these fountains are fine in shallow ponds of, say, 6 feet or less, they don't work well in deeper ponds. They're basically an aesthetic device or an appearance improvement, if anything, in these kind of ponds, because as you can see, as the water goes up and lands back in, you do get the rippling of the water, but most of the benefit is right at the surface or near it. But where you really want improved oxygen levels is down deep in the pond, which is where much of your cleaning bacteria and microbes are actually residing. Most of these are aerobic and they need oxygen to thrive, and so if you have low oxygen in a pond, it's not going to stay as clean as it could. So the way we overcome that, and the best way in my opinion to deal with most ponds, is using a land-based air pump that has an air line that runs to a diffuser which sits on the bottom. And as the name implies, this air comes out in very fine particulates of little bubbles, and this diffusion is what creates a greater activity and greater levels of dissolved oxygen. As this rises to the surface rapidly, it breaks the surface tension. You get a transfer of oxygen at the surface into the water, and then it is pushed or circulated around back to the bottom. So you get an entire improvement in the dissolved oxygen levels throughout the pond. And that's why diffused aeration that sits on the bottom is probably the best solution for most ponds, unless you're dealing with a really shallow condition. Now, there is aeration kits for every size of pond, and I want to cover a few of these things because they're all similar in the sense that they use a pump, they use airline, and they use some form of a diffuser where air is released into the pond body itself. What you see here is some of our small pond aerators. This particular one will cover up to 2,000 gallons, and then we move into small pond systems that will cover 8,000 and 16,000 gallons respectively. Usually as you get a bit larger pond volume, or if you have a relatively shallow pond with a lot of surface area, you will see more and more of these diffusers added to the mix. And so That's one of the keys. You've got to cover whatever area you've got to cover that adequately with diffusers to get good coverage throughout. One of the other technologies I think that's improving and making it viable to use is windmill technology. These compressors on these systems are getting better and better all the time. They are able to operate in very low wind conditions and still create very good airflow into the pond. And so if you don't have electricity, if it's a remote location, windmill aeration systems are definitely a decent viable option if you have any wind at all, and they can add aeration to the pond. They are a little more inconsistent, if that's the right word, because they do rely on some wind. On still days you may not get a lot of activity, but most of the time they will provide some benefit. And so windmill aerations are definitely a good choice. Now in our large pond aeration kits, all of these again are going to have the same components that the small ponds do. There's going to be a pump, compressor, air line, and diffuser. The Easy Pro line is some of the more affordable, no frills basic systems, and they will work in generally ponds of a 1/4 acre, 1/8 of an acre on up. They'll just keep right on going as we go along here. You'll see the size of the compressor may get larger and the number of diffusers will increase as we're trying to cover larger waters. And in this case, this one will cover up to 3 acres and so on and so forth. Now along with these no-frill systems, if you're looking for a budget system, this is probably a good way to go. You still need a covering, whether it's homemade or whether it's purchased to cover the compressor and protect it from the weather. But if you want an all-in-one package, there's a couple of other options that we have, and it's the Sentinel systems and then the AirMax systems. Both are very good. Both come with cabinets, cooling fans, pressure valves, gauges, all kinds of different things that pretty much anything you're going to need to run in most of these ponds you will see included in these kits. And I think it's important, you know, we've done a lot of work trying to find good quality aeration systems that are dependable, affordable, they don't break the bank. Granted, you can get into some money with some of these things, but compared to some of the systems on the market, these are very affordable and very efficient and effective, and they're also American made, which is what I like. So they're all very good. Now one other thing I wanted to mention, if you have a shallow pond, 6 feet, 8 feet or less, we're starting to see some very good technology coming out with shallow pond aeration systems. The diffusers are a little bit different, and in this case you'll see 4 diffusers included with the AM20 package. Works in a 1/2 acre pond up to 8 feet deep. And very efficient and very effective in improving the overall quality and health and circulation within a pond. And then we can go on from there, and you'll see that we can actually cover ponds up to 6 acres with a multitude of diffuser packages coming off a single pump. So at any rate, the most important lesson today though is that if you do go shopping, you want to find an aeration kit that's rated for your pond size area, and you want to get something that's rated for your depth. The shallower the pond, the more diffusers you may need to cover a particular area. And I think the other takeaway is that even though you may have some activity in the pond already, if it's not adding to the dissolved oxygen content of the pond, you could be in trouble if you run into very hot conditions or if you try to treat algae in a way that eradicates it too fast, too quickly, in too much volume where it pulls oxygen from the water. And the way around that, the way to safeguard and improve the health of your pond, is to look at some type of pond aeration that's well suited to the size. So if you have any questions on aeration at all, particularly with the conditions that we're facing right now, don't hesitate to contact us through the site at pondalgesolutions.com, and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can. So have a great day wherever you are, and stay cool.